Hey everybody, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com, and if you remember recently we made a card using the Pop On Buy bundle, which features the pop-up house thinlits, which this was created with, and then there's also a coordinating stamp set called Pop On Buy. You can purchase this as a bundle through the current catalog, which should be, I believe, June 2nd of 2019. So I did this as a Facebook Live video with a lot of viewer input, so I promised to make one that was a cleaner card, which is just kind of like to the point. But I also wanted to share with you before I got started just a couple of other cards that I created with this stamp set. So I have one that I made for the front, that way we would have a front already ready to go. And this is the front that I designed, and my sentiment here I notice is a little bit crooked, or it could be the fence posts, but what I used for this, and I wanted to share this with you because I talked about it yesterday, is a great framelit that is in the hummingbird framelit. So it's this little guy here. And what he does is he cuts out this piece here that is really, really pretty for lots of decorative pieces. Again, you don't have to do the tone on tone. What I did for this one was I did gray granite cardstock and basic gray ink, and I stamped this over top of the fence posts that I created. But you could do it with white, you could do it with multiple layers and maybe kind of hide one behind the other. But this is a great die set if you don't have it. This also has a coordinating stamp set. The hummingbird, I believe it's called Humming Along, is the stamp set. So same thing. This is a current catalog item in the occasions catalog. So if you bundle both of those, you save 10%. It may be available afterwards, but you won't get the discount. So another thing I wanted to show you was just another card that I created. This one I actually made with just the Pop On Buy stamp set. Okay, so this does have a house. It has the fence post that you can build. And what I did was I used actually a piece of designer series paper, believe it or not. This is one of the designer series paper packs that we have. I will link to the name of it, but it's got some great alternate sides. So this is like a crinkled up copper. So I didn't have a piece that was long enough. So if you see, this was just a scrap piece. So what I did was I trimmed a 3/4 of an inch piece, and then I cut it in half, and then half is underneath each side. To add a little bit of dimension, I had a piece of crumb cake cardstock, and I don't want to pull it apart too much here, that I stamped something onto the back of that I didn't really like. So what I did was I ran the other side through, and I used the subtle dynamic embossing folder, which if you haven't seen this in person, it is amazing. The catalog does it no justice whatsoever, but it makes this really cool effect. And it's nice to layer on top of something if you don't have anything. I did leave this one blank because what I thought was if I use this for a welcome home or moving or something like that, you could even do this as a college dorm. I didn't put any sentiment on it. And I put this onto a piece of balmy blue, and then I can always add a panel inside to decorate it. I did do a little wreath, and I did these with the blends. So I want to show you one other thing. These are all the blends that I used for all of the cards that we're going to create today. It may look like a lot, and a couple of them might have a duplicate in there because some of my, a couple of my blends have gotten to the end of their life, so I bought a new one, but I haven't thrown the old one away yet. So you don't need to have all of these colors, but I used many, many colors for these. For the base of this house, this is actually in mint macaron, and then I used coral as accent color. I used some crumb cake, the smoky slate, and then I actually used the pool party to fill in the window portion, if you can see that. And then what I did was I actually stamped the, this is from one that I made a while ago. I stamped the branches by inking them individually. I used the early espresso, and I used, I believe, goodness, what is that called? Ooh, I'm having a brain fart. Shaded spruce. And then what I did was I just colored it in actually with the Stampin' Blends. So they're not even, it's stamped with markers and then it's colored with blends. And then I sponged the top and the background with Pool Party, and I sponged the bottom kind of for the grass portion with these soft seagrass, or sorry, soft sea foam, seagrass, sea foam, same thing. So there's lots of different stuff on this card. On this one, what I did was I went kind of with a tone on tone. So this is soft sea foam in the Stampin' Blends, and then it's on soft sea foam paper. I use crumb cake, light and dark for the blends here. I actually originally put this in the soft sea foam as well, but then I went over it with the light smoky slate. Same thing with the Smoky Slate for the trim. I used the Calypso Coral for the door. Once again, I stuck with the Pool Party. I think it makes a really nice window color. But this one I kind of just changed up a little bit. I added a wreath to it, and I just put some fall pumpkins. And again, I just put another strip of this behind here so you can see where it matches exactly. And I just layered that on top. I also added a little smoke plume, and I did that, I believe, in basic gray. So it looks a little bit more brownish just because it's on the green. But another really simple card. And again, both of these are just using the stamp set. For this one, I kept it on to the paper, and for this one what I did was I just trimmed it out. It's very easy to trim, and popped it up on some dimensional. So two really great ideas to be able to use for that as well. So I just wanted to share that if you do just have the stamp set, there's lots of stuff that you can create with it as well. You can add a little bit of a background by using a embossing folder, but I don't want to make this take too long because I did say this was going to be a shorter version. So I have a few things prepared here. Again, this is the part that we're going to put onto the front of it, but I want to show you how to create the house. So this is the die, and actually there's a couple pieces of white in here. I'll just pop out. I did use yesterday, or the other day I should say, we used Whisper White. So for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do it in very vanilla. For the main background card, we're going to lay it onto something different, which I didn't pick that piece yet. But I'm going to show you how to do this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use a couple pieces that were left over, which I have, I believe, right here. I have the roof, so we're going to use the roof in Coastal Cabana. And then we'll use the house portion. I'm going to just cut this out if I can fit it into this. I think it should work with that. Yeah, I think we should be able to squeeze that in there. This is basic gray. And then I'm going to use very vanilla to actually cut out the house. So let me show you. I'm going to just scoot these over. Show you a couple things. So when you have this house die, you do have to use this as a wide card because it will not fit onto a narrow card. So you can't do this as a narrow card. It has to be wide. So what I did was I have a piece of cardstock, and this is going to be 4 1/4 where we're going to score it by 5 1/2. Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our halfway line. So normally when you're scoring a card, you're going to score straight across. For this one, we're only going to do a little bit. So we're going to go in maybe just about 1/4 inch. And then same thing from the other side. It doesn't really have to be much. And I did do it as a full base because we can always trim down. So that'll make a little bit more sense in 1 minute. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the Big Shot, and I do have the magnetic platform. That way everything lines up a little bit better. Put this through so you can see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our house, and you can see it has these little lines right here, and we're going to line these up with our score marks. So we're going to kind of center it. It doesn't need to really be on either one. You just want to visually make sure that it's pretty much centered. All right, so I'm going to set this down. See if I can make sure I can hover over top of it. That looks pretty good. We'll see what it looks like. I'm going to put my panel on top and just crank it through. Okay. So when you pull this out, first of all, a lot of static. When you pull this out, you'll see that your house is going to be, it's scored, and there's also portions that are cut, okay? So what you're going to do is just peel your die off, just like so. It's pretty simple. Okay, and I'm just going to set this on the side because we're pretty much finished with that for now. I'm going to pop out all the little spots that have holes that need to be popped out. And got a little stuck. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start with the bending portion. Okay, so all this here, so you have score lines. So score lines, and some of these things are actually cut. So what we're going to do is I'm going to fold this in. I'm going to fold this one kind of back. Okay, so I'm kind of creating the roof there by pushing it. I'm going to fold the portion of the house that's going to go forward. So I'm bringing the bottom part in a little bit, just kind of giving it a finger crease. You don't really need to use your bone folder for this. All right, and then this part here is going to bend. So you'll notice the roof kind of goes behind it, and then you have your chimney. So then what you can do is once you get everything slightly bent, you're going to just gently press it so it kind of follows where you want it to go. And it sounds ridiculous the way I just explained that, but quite honestly, once you do it once, this is really, really a very simple die to use. So I am going to give my bottom part a fold, and this would be where my card is going to attach to the base. I'm just giving this a very light press. You don't really need to press it very hard. And there you can see it completely stands up. So you can open your door. Again, you can take your door off. You could use a different door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach the one we have cut from the other day. I'm going to attach the roof, which is here. And just to, since this piece is actually finished, I'm going to let it go all the way down the front. So as opposed to what I did the other day, I believe I trimmed it off. So I'm going to let that piece sit on the front, and I'm even going to keep the chimney on. Okay. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to cut out a piece of gray, except I'm going to keep my white door. So I'm going to cut out a piece of gray, and I think this piece should, yep, should fit perfectly. I'm going to cut out just the bottom part of the house. So I'm going to bring this die back in for one more minute so you can see that. And you certainly don't have to do this. You could sponge the edges instead if you wanted to. Let me just poke these through real quick. There we go. You could sponge the edges if you wanted to, but really what I want to make sure is that the points line up. So as long as I have the points, should be good. And which one? All the way up. Just like that. I'm going to make sure it's pretty much centered. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. So I do have my magnetic platform. So I'm going to just lay this down. I'm going to put my other cutting pad on top with hopefully without moving it. And then I'm just going to crank this through. And hopefully, because I'm being a little skimpy here on paper, hopefully I didn't just waste a piece for no reason. So let's see. Pop this out. Nope, I just missed the very tip of that, but that's okay. I'm not going to redo it for that little bit. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. This one is just slightly off, and it's only really because my paper was just a little ratty there on the end. I'm just going to trim this up just with my snips. And then this one, if you bend this back and forth, it kind of will perforate, that it breaks away. So you don't really have to do a whole lot of cutting. But again, if you wanted to trim, you could. So I'm going to pop these pieces off here. Just a teeny snip. Same on this side. I'm just going to pop this off. And then I'm going to go through and just give this just a little bit of a trim just to get those little teeny edge pieces off. Okay, I am going to go ahead and fold the door back and forth gently because you don't want to rip the frame. There we go. And I'm going to just go over this a little bit with my scissors. Once the door's in there, quite honestly, you can't really see very much. Okay, so I'm going to try to clean this up without throwing anything away that's important. Just going to pop these pieces out. It really is important when you have your, and I do have a die brush, it's put away. When you finish doing your cutting or whatever it is you're doing, it's important to make sure that your die is clean because it's going to cut and score better. Or if you were doing something as embossing, it's going to work better if it's clean. Because when you have those little extra pieces in there, sometimes it's just more work for the die to cut through. Okay, so now all we're going to do, and again, I'm going to just make this kind of quick and dirty, is I'm going to just show you how to glue this part down. So we have our piece here. We have this piece that's got just the teeniest little bit of a nip, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is you just want to make sure you use a full piece of paper. So what I'm going to do, I did this the other day, and when I did, I thought I had my, goodness, I thought I had it out here. I thought I had my silicone mat here, but Of course I don't. So when I did this the other day, what I did was I used the fine tip glue pen, but I want to show you that you can also do it with snail. So you could use snail, but instead I'm going to actually use the Tombow liquid glue. So I'm going to just put a little bit of this. Again, we are gluing this entire thing down. So you do want to make sure that you have glue, not goopy, but to the points of everything. So that way nothing comes apart. So if you have like two that you want to make sure you get to the edge of your roof, make sure you get your edges, make sure you get your chimney. Okay, so I'm going to put this one on first. And again, I'm going to kind of open this up. That way I can see where I want it. I'll lift this piece and I'm going to just kind of inlay it here. And I got to tell you, just between all of you and I'm just going to press this down to get it to stick. It's really simple to do it that way. I am really a little upset with myself that I waited this long to demonstrate this stamp set and die. It's so cute. It really is so cute. It really, I'm kicking myself now that I didn't do it sooner. So when you put this through, again, like I said, your door will be the white door. So what I'm going to do is the same thing here. I'm going to just flip this over and I'm going to put a little bit of Tombow just on kind of the important places. Even if you just dot it is fine, but you just want to make sure that you get everything that's going to stick. That way you make sure it doesn't fall apart. A little bit on the threshold there. Okay. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to flip this and kind of lay it on top. Again, I do have that little teeny peak that's peeking through, but that's okay. I want to make sure that I can get my door open. Although I will tell you, if your door is open, your card will not close. So I'm just going to fold this back through. Make sure I don't rip anything. And I'm going to give this a press just to make sure everything, oops, stays where it's supposed to. And that looks pretty good there. So, whoop, nope, hold on. I fibbed. Peel this back off. Oh, this Tombow does stick very well. And I will say it does stick rather quickly. So you do have to make sure that if you are sticking something, you have it where you want it. If you have if you're a little more generous with your glue, it will wiggle a little bit more for a little bit longer. So this was just lined up just a little bit off, and since I went through the trouble of making this, I do want to make sure that it at least looks nice. Okay, let me try that one more time. Make sure I have it lined up to the side this time. That way the window, that's much better because you can see that the windows are actually not having that kind of like a shadow effect to them. So there we go. I'm going to push this through. Much better. And again, I think my one little piece over here, I just trimmed off a little bit because of the size scrap paper that I used. So I think probably that was in the right spot. I was just being a little silly. Okay, so now that I have this all adhered, the only thing I'm going to do, and I typically do wait. You could do this ahead of time if you want, but I typically do wait until I'm done just because I want to make sure that everything is lined up properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 1/4 inch off of each side. And that is going to be all 4 sides. So this is going to measure 5 inches across where it was 5.5. And then I'm going to just take a 1/4 inch off the top. And in this little line right here is a 1/4 inch on that. So you have a 1/4, half, 3/4, 1. But it's usually easier, I think, if you're right-handed to go the opposite way. All right, so I have a 1/4 inch off of each one. I just want to make sure this still folds nicely and everything's working well. That looks pretty good. And now I just have to figure out what I want to lay this onto. And I don't know that I have anything picked out handy, so I think I'm going to go with a nice piece of, let's see what that's going to look like. Be a little, yeah, that's a little bit too boring. That was a piece of Sierra sand. You also could do a really nice piece of blue in the background, would be really pretty. I did Pool Party the other day, and since I've been on a roll with it, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a piece of, I think this should work. Let's see. I'm going to do a piece of mint macaron. fib. I'm going to do a piece of soft sea foam. That's not my macaron. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Again, we're going to cut this at 4 1/4. Is that right? Make sure I'm laying this correctly. Yes, 4 1/4. You start cutting things, it doesn't feel right. Nope, shouldn't have been. All right, hold on. I'm gonna cut it at 5 1/2 is what I was gonna cut it, which is what I should have said in the beginning. I don't know why I'm thinking 4 1/4. And then we're gonna score at 4 1/4. And then all we're gonna do is take this piece and lay it on top. And actually, I think this is gonna look really nice with that front panel that I stamped ahead of time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fold this the way we would have it in the card and make sure that everything is nice and flush and flat. I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to put the Tombow liquid glue onto my piece that's going to adhere. So again, I only want it on the piece that's going to stick. So I'm also going to put it on this side, but I'm going to wait for that for a minute. And I want to do one other thing before I get started. I'm going to just make sure this is folded. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this one's going to line up with the top first, which it doesn't really matter. So we're going to just stick this into the edge. Make sure for the most part we have this kind of centered where we want it. Okay, so it's centered like that. And then, I have sticky fingers now. We're going to, come on Rachel, you can do it. Close this down onto that. If I can get my fingers to be unsticky. And then I'm going to put some Tombow on the other side. It's probably the only one hazard of Tombow is if you get it on your fingers, it makes it hard to put things down. And then we're going to just close this layer over top, just like that. And then make sure nothing gets stuck. There we have our card. Really, really simple. So easy to put together. So I do think, you know what, when I put this down, I probably should have put the bottom first. Yeah, I'm going to just put this once more just because I think I should have done the bottom on there first. So much for this being the quick version, huh guys? Okay. Alright, so I'm going to just layer this, make sure that's on there. I think I put this in just a tad bit crooked. So do your bottom layer first because it does make it easier to get it into the jam where you want it to be. There you go. Okay, so it's like a slight bit crooked, but that's okay. I don't want to touch it anymore because I'm starting to get glue on there and then I'm going to get paint stuck. But basically that's going to be what it looks like. And then the other thing was I did this ahead of time. So I actually used the Stamparatus to make this little line of fence. And then I took my soft seafoam ink pad, and what I did was when you have this layer here, you can't really drag, but you can use this side because it's really close. So what I did was I took it and I just dragged it to kind of make that grass pattern on there. And then I used Pool Party and a sponge. You can see I did Pool Party and a sponge for the top. And then the other thing I did was I actually inked both of these branches in Pear Pizzazz. I stamped them on each side and then I colored them in with the Stampin' Blend. So I used Granny Apple Green, light and dark for the leaves, and then I just used dark crumb cake. And then I did the pumpkins as well. So other thing I want to show you too, because I did do a couple of those ahead of time. And as you can see here, I recycled a project that I didn't use. So I've been trying to go through my old paper and stuff that I haven't done and kind of repurpose it. So I'm going to put this on here. This is actually trimmed down to 3 3/4 by 5. So there's that panel. And then if we wanted to, aside from this, you could certainly dress up the front of this any way you'd like. You could stamp, there are some cobblestones. I'll show you on this one that we stamped on the inside here. Some cobblestones. You could put some trees. I would suggest stamping those before you adhere your card. You can put congratulations. We have all these lovely little flowers. So I did cut out a few flowers ahead of time. And we'll put a couple of these on. So I kind of thought the great part about this is you could use it for anything. So since we have pumpkins, I'm going to stick with some pumpkins on here. So I'm going to just put these on with a little bit of snail. Just like that. I'll put him on there. Another one. I kind of colored them a little bit differently, so they may not really exactly match each other because I was playing around with colors. These I did with the Cajun Craze, and then this one was done with the crumb cake. So we have that. There's also some windows that you can put on the inside if you like. I have a couple other little flower pieces here. You could paint these, do these as tulips. On this other one, I did them kind of more as like a succulent. And again, there's lots of different stuff you can do with the pumpkins and the plants. And I thought I had one other thing here, but I don't know what I did with it. I did have a little wreath that I was going to put on the front door, but somehow it's gotten away from me. But anyway, you could put a little wreath on the front door if you'd like as well. And then if you don't feel like you have enough room here necessarily for your greeting, what you can do, just going to erase these little pieces off with just an eraser. It's just a couple little pieces of dried glue. If you don't have one of these, it's an awesome eraser to get. But what you could also do, if you don't feel like you have enough room here, is you could make yourself a little panel and you could write your message and then glue it to the back. So that's another way to fit it as well. This tiny little portion does stick out of the card. That's normal, even on a card that's put together really well, like this one. So it's all the way up in the corner. You still will have that teeny little piece that hangs out. But this should fit perfectly fine in a regular envelope. So again, you can add anything you want to this. There's some curtains you can cut out and put in the background, but I hope you found this video useful. I know I did get a little bit carried away with the length of the video once I started showing you guys all the extra stuff, but there's lots of great cards that you can make from this stamp set. You can make the pop-up cards. You can make them so they're all the same color. You don't have to add these other layers of color as well. You could certainly just color the layers with your Stampin' Blends or with markers or sponges or whatever. And there's also some beautiful cards to be made just with the regular stamp set. So definitely super versatile. You could color any of these wreaths. Oh, here's the other wreath. That's why I can't find it. You could color them for Christmas. You could make the flowers Christmas instead. So it's really a great stamp set and a die set or a bundle to have for any season. So thank you all for watching. I will link to all the blends I used for coloring this stuff just for your purposes. You don't need to have all of them. Like I said, it's just kind of what I did. I got a little carried away with my coloring. So if you have any questions, you all can send me an email at rachthestamper@gmail.com. You can buy all of this stuff in my online store 24/7, rachthestamper.stampinup.net. And if you don't have a demonstrator, I'd love to be yours. All you have to do is send me your full name, mailing address, including your zip code to rachthestamper@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a catalog. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.